Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1643. We're back across the pond today, so pour yourself a nice drink, sit back, and enjoy the ride.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. I'm really revved up today and very excited to talk with who's become a little bit of a friend of mine by the name of Cici Muldoon. She's calling in from Woodstock, across the pond, as we say, in Great Britain. Cici, welcome to Cars Yeah. Are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
I am, Mark.
All right, we're going to have some fun. You know, before I give you a proper introduction and ask you some of the questions I'm going to ask you, I want to know this. What's one little thing that most people don't know about you?
So I would say the one thing people don't know about me is that I trapped single atoms with lasers and vacuum chambers for most of my 20s.
You trapped? Oh my gosh. Okay. We just went beyond my degree in college. Okay, well, maybe explain to us lay people out there. Number one,
Sure.
How do you do it? Number two, why would you do it?
So the why would you do it is because you're trying to control quantum particles at a single particle level for the purpose of something called quantum computing. That was the sort of overarching goal of our experiment, was to demonstrate some of the basic building blocks of a quantum computer. And the idea with quantum computing is that you could manipulate information in a slightly different way than you do with a classical computer, which uses bits, by using quantum bits. And in order to have a quantum bit, you need to be able to physically control a single particle, be it an atom, a photon, an ion. And so in my experiment, which was University of Oxford, we basically trapped single neutral atoms in order to implement this quantum computing idea. And the how do you do it? Basically, in a nutshell, you take a big vacuum chamber, which back then was big octagonal steel thing. Nowadays, it's an evacuated glass cell. And you put some rubidium atoms in it, which is a rare earth on the very left of the periodic table. And you take a bunch of lasers and you tune the lasers precisely to the transition frequency of these atoms. And you basically make a trap made with lasers, and it's a bit more complicated than that. It's got magnets and things. But you are able to, using laser light, kind of slow down and trap a gas of atoms to the point where you can then isolate little clouds of them and then eventually a single one and move it around and sort of play God.
Oh, play God. Well, wow, that is impressive. I think you're the first one on Cars Yeah that started with something like that. So classmates, we learned a little something this morning. Yeah, we've moved a little further. We've increased the brain capacity in our skulls to be a little bit smarter. And was that your little kitty I heard meowing?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Should I put him in milk and
That's okay, because I'll let everybody know that Cece, we were supposed to talk earlier, and her poor little kitty had a little incident and had to be rushed to the hospital. So we had to postpone our talk here. How's Kitty doing?
He's doing very well. His paw has healed, and he's just turned 6 months old yesterday. So he's huge. He's a Bengal. And he looks like a little tiger. Yeah.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, very cool. You know, John Agostini, who builds and designs very cool custom classic cars, he collects some maybe the same breed. They look like tigers or wild cats. Yeah, he's got a whole bunch of those things. So very cool. Very cool. Well, let me give you a proper introduction, and we're going to dive into some questions. We're going to talk about maybe a little more about quantum physics, and we're going to talk about wine. We're going to talk about cars. We're going to have a lot of fun here today. So here we go. Cici Muldoon studied physics and finance at Princeton University. Yeah, that place. And holds a PhD in experimental atom and laser physics from Oxford University. As she described, she's a full member of the International Chief Judge Advisory Group, also known as ICJAG, for whom she acts as PR director, and is a steering committee member for the UK-based Concours d'Elegance at Hampton Court. Cece has previously judged at many highbrow concours events, including Pebble Beach, Cavallino Classic, Salon Privé, Schloss Dyke Masterpieces, Hampton Court, La Zoute, and the Ferrari 70th Anniversary Concours. She's been attending concours since the young age of 3, has participated in various tours and rallies, and is herself the proud owner of several classic cars, which we're going to hear about today. I love her cars, especially that purple Dino. She speaks 5 languages and is originally from Guadalajara, Mexico. She is also CEO of VeriVin, a UK-based startup that has developed groundbreaking technology to enable the quick, safe, and non-destructive analysis of wine and other complex liquids in sealed containers. So now you know why she was playing with those little isolated atoms back there in school. She's brought it forward. We'll be back in just a minute to learn more about Cece, but first, a word from our valued sponsors that make this show possible. Give them a listen, and we'll be right back. Keep your seatbelt on. Did you know Covercraft offers you much more than car covers, floor mats, seat covers, and trunk liners? When you visit covercraft.com, you'll find Cologne custom bras, La Bra front end covers, and hood protectors that protect your vehicle's front end while on a road trip. No more rock chips or hours removing nasty bug jerky from your grill and your paint. You'll find vehicle seat back organizers that keep everything in check, perfect for those kids in the back seat. Spidey gear webs that keeps cargo that's in your truck bed safely in place. Seat heaters, cargo bars, pro nets, rooftop carriers, bumper frames, bump steps, pet ramps, pet travel barriers to keep Fido in the back seat, tire covers, Carhartt backpacks, cooler bags, tote bags, tool bags, and zippered tote bags to keep everything secure. And don't forget their dash mat, dashboard covers that shield the sun's damaging UV rays. Covercraft offers you an incredible list of solutions for your favorite rides. They're easy to install, easy to remove pet protection pads, are easy to wash too, and protect your floors and seats from Fido's damaging claws and messy fur and air. And here's something special from me here at Cars Yeah. If you use the code YEAH120 at checkout at covercraft.com, they'll give you 10% off on me. Covercraft.com. Go there and use the code YEAH120 at checkout for that 10% discount. Covercraft, they've got you covered. When it was time to renew my last policy for my collector car, my carrier's rates went up. They went way up. But my usage was the same, and I never had made a claim. No tickets, nothing. What's with that? American Collectors Insurance, that's who now protects my Porsche Turbo, the one I call my Orange Crush. Has your collector car insurance recently raised your rates for no good reason? Tired of paying an annual membership fee? I was too. So I shopped around, I asked friends for recommendations, and found a winner that I can trust. And boy, am I glad I did. I'm saving hundreds of dollars. I can sleep at night knowing my baby is properly insured. American Collectors Insurance have been protecting vehicles since 1976. They provide me with an agreed value insurance policy backed by a history of taking care of their clients. What could be better than that? Give them a call for a quote today at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. And protect the ones you love like I did. American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. All right, Cece, I want to ask this question of you. I want you to share a success quote or a mantra, some kind of saying that's been, I say, instrumental in forming your life and the many successes you've had. It's a nice way to get the inspirational tires turning here on Cars Yeah. I know you love to drive, so Cece, grab the wheel.
Right. So I think the inspirational success mantra that I would like to share today is that if you can see yourself doing something, then I believe you are likely going to get there if you want it badly enough. So I had a friend when I was at boarding school. So I went to a boarding school on the East Coast called Phillips Exeter Academy. And it was actually my first ever boyfriend. And I remember him telling me this, saying, if you can see yourself doing it sometime in the future and you work hard enough to get it, within reason, right? I'm not saying I want to go to the moon, but within
Well, I have no
reason.
doubt you could make it to the moon, maybe even to Mars, you know?
So, yeah, I think that would be my mantra. And I think it's accompanied me throughout my life, especially in building my business. It's sort of having single-minded determination is probably that, and a very tough stomach is probably the most important factor.
Absolutely. You know what comes to mind when you talk about that, and I believe that 100%, is I believe it was Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are right. And it applies to what you just said, I believe, because you hear people sometimes looking at others. For instance, today, the day we're recording this show, Richard Noble, a fellow Brit of yours who broke land speed records. I mean, he went 633 miles an hour, and then his team broke the sound barrier at over 700 miles per hour. And in talking with him, I said, well, whatever made you think that you wanted to do this or you even could? And he said, well, because I wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm such a firm believer in being an optimist. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think the other thing he said was, well, why not, Mark? So,
yeah, okay.
yeah, he's
I can think of several reasons why not.
Well, yeah, going that fast. And now he's in his 70s, and now he's working on finding a way to build and beat the record on water, which I think is something like it's been held since 1976, and it was like 300 miles an hour. Is that right? That seems way too fast for the water. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Cobb set a record way back. Sadly, though, lost his life in an accident on the boat. But at any rate, yes, you can do anything you want. You really, really can. And Cece's a good example of that. So I want to talk a little bit about, first and foremost, your business. And I know it's not related to cars, but fine wine and concours events and great cars do go together. Of course, one of my great sponsors here is Adobe Road Winery, and they make a series called the Racing Series, which is all related to racing and so forth. Kevin Buckler owns a race team. But let's talk about VeriVin. What is this business that you've started? It's so cool to me, the fact that you can, well, I'm going to let you explain it because it's really cool technology.
Yeah, no problem. So basically, we've developed technology that can analyze liquids through barrier in a basically quick, safe, and non-destructive way. Now, our first business case is within the food and beverage industry, wine and spirits. But in general, the technology is applicable overall to any time that you have a complex liquid in a sealed container and you want to analyze it without breaking the seal. So when I say technology, what I mean, so we've got a spectrometer, so a device, and we've got loads of very sophisticated software, so statistical analysis and machine learning techniques. And we've got a database that we're building. So it's sort of, it goes beyond just physical kit, but we are at our core an instrumentation company.
So give me an example. When you think about wine, and this may be obvious to people who are specialists in why do I need to know what's inside the bottle? Why don't I just open it and drink it?
Sure. So let me back up and just say, so the when you think about what you could potentially do with a technology like this, where you can analyze contents without breaking seal, you first ask yourself, when would this be useful, right? And the answer is when either the contents inside this container are very valuable, so I don't want to spoil them by opening the seal. Mm-hmm. When the contents inside this container are dangerous for the environment, so I don't want to contaminate the environment around it by opening the seal. Or when I have so many of these, of this product, of this sample, that I can't possibly test 1,000 of them because I don't have the 1,000 anymore once I open them. So basically the applications, when you zoom out and sort of like bird's eye view for us, are one, batch testing, so large batches of things and looking for inconsistencies within those batches. Two, what we like to call reference challenge testing, when you say, I know this is a known sample and here is one that I don't know anything about. Is it the same? And three, adulteration testing, which is there something dangerous inside? Now, coming back to wine, when you now narrow those three applications for the wine industry, what they translate to are quality control. So is there a problem within my 1,000 bottles of this particular producer stored in my warehouse? Is there a problem with a batch of wine that has somehow started evolving or it has a fault in it? Has it been badly stored or badly transported? Two, the reference challenge testing is quite clear, anti-counterfeiting. So is this bottle a real example of this wine?
Yes.
And in terms of adulteration, are there unsafe levels of methanol, for example, in this wine, which actually occurs a lot with spirits in the third world and leads to loss of human life. So the point here is that these tests are valuable in and of themselves, but really where they come into their own is that eventually you're going to have a database with the optical fingerprints of millions of bottles of wine. So when I say, for example, this reference challenge test, At the moment, we need an example of an ex-Chateau, say 1985 Lafite, to compare against to know if this other bottle that has somehow emerged for auction, saying Hong Kong, and has been, changed hands 15 times and it's been stored in a hot kitchen, maybe, or maybe even it's a fake. So I can test against it and I know whether it's the real thing. But eventually we will have enough points within our database that we'll be able to populate this n-dimensional space composed of different grape varieties, vintages, faults, so whether the wine is oxidized, the same wine evolved over time, and eventually you no longer need a reference because there exists a reference in the database.
It's fascinating. I mean, it's just now. How about, let's say, human blood? If you have transfusions, you want to make sure the blood is safe.
Yes, so one of the projects that we want to take on board in the future is looking at blood transfusion bags, because there is a problem at the moment with being able to test them in a way that is non-destructive to see whether the blood is oxidized or not. So it's oxidation of hemoglobin. At the moment, we don't know enough about it yet, but it's one of the things that we're looking to move into within the healthcare industry, that and injectables as well.
I find this all really fascinating. And the fact that you can go beyond wine. I mean, you think about serums and vials for injections to make sure that a whole packet of serums that goes to a jungle somewhere or something is safe to use, or comes from other facility is safe to inject into people. I mean, there's so many places to go with this. Really, really fascinating. But we are at Cars Yeah today, Cece. So we got to talk cars a little bit here. And I want to talk about ICJAG. Now, Ed Gilbertson, who's been a guest on my show 2 or 3 times now, who's become a friend of mine, just a wonderful guy. Of course, you know him. Talk about ICJAG and your involvement with them and what the organization is all about.
Sure. So ICJAG, so we are basically a group of enthusiasts and experts, with the exception of me, who are dedicated to promoting the preservation and the sensitive restoration of classic cars and motorbikes. So the idea here is that we are aware that people are custodians of a piece of history, and we want to encourage them to keep as much of the car as they possibly can. And when they cannot do that, to restore it in a way that is true to history and that is to the best of their knowledge and abilities correct. So that's kind of what we stand for, and we do this by promoting the sort of the dialogue between the restorers, the owners, and the many experts out there in the various marques.
Nice. Well, it's an incredible organization. I love the premise behind it. Now, being a concours judge at all the magnificent venues that you've attended and judged at, obviously this pandemic year has altered everybody's life. And first and foremost, have you, your family, your friends, your coworkers been healthy? Everyone okay?
Yes, luckily enough, everybody in my family is healthy. My parents are still in Guadalajara, Mexico, where they're from. They're locked in there and getting a little bit antsy and getting a bit impatient, but they're healthy, which is really good.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. So let's talk a little bit about how this has affected you in your inability to go and do things. But I did see on your Facebook page, Hampton Court had a concours. You were there.
Yes, we did. So the concours scene is slowly reopening here in the UK. We had the kickoff was the London concours a couple of weeks ago, which was sort of it's a smaller event, but it's the first one where everyone was out, and it was amazing to see people there. It was raining cats and dogs on the first day.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there was still, so sadly, I mean, this is Britain, it's the way it goes, but there's a lot of people there. And Hampton Court, which is the sort of bigger sister concours, and has come to be in recent years, in my eyes, a premier event. The lineup of cars that we had was, for me, it's getting to the point where it's at the level of a Villa d'Este or I mean, nothing will ever beat Pebble Beach, but it really is sort of punching above its weight. And we had record attendance. It was absolutely fantastic the whole weekend. We had the Gooding auction on Saturday, which obviously attracted a lot of people. And even with having had, I'm on, as you pointed out, I'm on their steering committee. We had many, many American cars that unfortunately couldn't come and had to pull out at the last minute. And I'm talking like large numbers of cars that just suddenly went. We were able to get a lot of domestic cars and European cars over, and I'm happy to report that it was a great success.
Yeah,
So.
It looked like you were having great fun. That's most definitely. And you had one of your girlfriends with you, right? You looked like you were driving, and we're going to talk about you were driving your little MG. I saw you drive, your new PA.
Yeah, so Mark, I was so pleased because I took so basically this is a nice story actually. When we were discussing within the steering committee what we would do, we had very few cars because a lot of our American entrants, so we have a lot of very loyal American entrants, had pulled out due to COVID. And the steering committee had asked me if I could get my father to bring one of his cars. And my parents were delighted to be able to come again. They'd been entrants in the past. And obviously then when COVID struck and it became unclear whether they'd be able to travel, I said, well, look, my parents probably won't be able to come, but I can offer you, I've got a new 1934 MGPA that I bought in November and I've just imported from Spain. And I would be absolutely delighted to show the car. And the committee actually, most of the members of the committee said, fantastic, great car, great driver. There was a little bit of hesitation by a few people who sort of thought that, MGPA sitting next to 4.5 liter Bentley and a Daytona might be a bit out of place, but eventually the car made it through. And I have to tell you, Mark, that the thing that made me the happiest on Friday at Hampton Court was seeing Hector's the name of the car, get more attention than any other car on the lineup on that side of the lawn. Really, if you go look at the video for Hampton Court, we feature 3 times. Maybe it might have had a little bit to do with the fact that I had a famous chef and a famous lady racing driver in the car, but nevertheless,
hey, it never hurts to have some ringers, No,
and it made me so happy because it just goes to show that you don't have to have a multi-million-pound show car to be popular at a concours and to have a great time.
It's funny. I've been to some concours where they're not at that level, but they're very, very nice cars. And often the cars, like I was at one down Forest Grove in Oregon, and somebody brought a Herbie the Love Bug, and everybody was at Herbie the Love Bug. You just never know. And your car is just the cutest darn thing. I mean, it's just so cool. It's beautiful. You spoke about it when you were on a podcast Keith Martin and I did, Buy, Sell, Hold, and we heard about it, but I hadn't seen it yet. So getting to see it and see the smile on your face and at the wheel of that thing is fantastic. Well, before we dive a little bit deeper into cars and your past, I want to ask you this question. I always ask my guests to share a big challenge in their life. And the reason for this is, what was the lesson learned and how did you come out of that in a positive way? So take us on a bit of a journey, kind of go back to a time that kind of pushed you up against the wall a little bit and tell us what the lesson learned there was.
So I think there's two challenges that I could see in my life when I looked at this question, sort of biggest stumbling blocks that I've had. And one of them is professional, one of them is personal. The professional challenge, so as I described, I did a PhD in experimental physics during my 20s. And what this entailed is basically building an experiment from scratch. So when I decided to come to Oxford when I was 22, so I'd done, as you pointed out, an undergraduate degree in physics. I had a job offer in finance in New York, and I was sort of all set to go. And then had this moment where I really would like to do experimental physics, and I think I won't go to graduate school if I get roped into working in the city in New York, then I won't really do it. So, and I wanted a little bit of a change from the US, and I ended up with Oxford and Cambridge as my 2 choices. And within Oxford, which is where I really wanted to go, I had the option of 3 groups. One which was a theoretical physics group, another one which was an experimental physics group that was already set up and had many experiments going, and then a new guy that was moving from Germany and starting an experiment from scratch. Basically, the advice I got when I was deciding between these 3 groups was, if you go for the setup lab, you're going to crank out loads of papers. You're probably going to have an easier time getting a postdoc thereafter and making it in academia. If you start from scratch, you will understand everything all that better because you're putting things down and you're not just being told this is the button that turns the laser on. But it oftentimes these experiments don't yield results by the time that you finish your PhD. So I went away and thought about it, and I thought, I'd like to do the latter. I think I want to learn how everything works from scratch, because I think a lot of the motivation for me in doing a PhD in the first place and doing experimental physics was to sort of put myself out of my own comfort zone and try to challenge myself to understand how things work So I've always had this thing where I go, I don't want to look at a light bulb and not get why that turns on, and I don't want to look at my computer and not get what's happening, or think that there's this layer of complication between me and circuit board or me and device, and not be able to at least have some idea of how to work back from it. So I decided to go with this experimental group. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because as a consequence of that, I ended up spending the first 4 years of my PhD building an experiment from absolute ground zero. And when I say ground zero, when I first, week one, we looked at the room where our experiment was going to live, and there weren't even floorboards in it. They'd been taking out asbestos, and this thing was a blank room.
Oh my gosh.
So we had to fly laser tables in the window. We had to order absolutely every last part. So tons of optics and lenses and mirrors and mirror mounts and optical fibers and electronic components and cables and circuit boards and everything. We ordered absolutely everything from scratch.
Wow.
And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, Mark. I was dropped off, in the deep end. I remember my PhD supervisor saying to me in the very beginning, like within the first month, we need a temperature controller for the vacuum chamber. And I just looked at him and sort of
okay.
went off.
Do they sell those at Amazon?
Yeah, and actually, mind you, this was in the era before Google told you everything and Amazon sold you everything.
Yeah,
we're talking 2006, 7 here.
Oh, yeah.
So, I basically, the point of this, to get to the challenge, is that I spent 4 years building this ultra complicated experiment and learning and crying and feeling frustrated and failing and trying again. And at the end of 4 years, when we were sort of getting close to having some results, we had something inside this vacuum chamber basically topple over under stress and knock the whole arrangement inside of it down.
Oh.
And I remember the precise moment I was sitting in this, and when I say that these things take a long time to build, I mean like some of the pre-results needed to even run these experiments are things that took a year to set up.
Oh my gosh.
To give you an example, to get a vacuum chamber to ultra high vacuum, you have to first heat it to 400 degrees centigrade, which involves wrapping it in heating bands, putting all this aluminum foil on it. Then you have to use a rough pump to pump everything out of it. Then you use what's called an ion getter pump, which is like a big magnet to pull all the charged particles out. And then at the very end of all this process, you use something called a titanium sublimator pump, which basically turns titanium from solid to gas, spits it out into the inside of the vacuum chamber, and sticks anything that's left over into the walls. And by this point, you get to 10 to the minus 8 millibar, which is emptier than space.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I got one of those bar things right over here for you, Cece. Yeah, sitting on my table.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So to do this, and you think that, so if I've worked 4 years to get this thing to start giving results, and all of a sudden all this junk falls inside the vacuum chamber, and I'm sitting there looking at these false killer images on the computer, which are these cameras that are observing from the side, and I'm just thinking, what now? What we're gonna have to take all the optics around the vacuum chamber out. We're gonna have to reopen this thing, redo all of this process I just described, put everything back. I mean, it really was sort of like a make or break, like this is it moment. And so I went up to see my supervisors. My supervisor is the word we use for PhD advisor here, and I said, Axel, what do I do? And he basically looked at me and said, look, honestly. Cut your losses, write it up as a proposal paper, and it's it is what it is, because you need to finish, because you're year 4 and the clock is ticking, and unless you find more funding, sadly that's the nature of the beast.
Right.
And I went outside, and at the time I was dating somebody in the other lab, so my then boyfriend, who was in the other experiment, which is going quite well, to my chagrin.
Yeah.
And I sort of went back to my lab with him and his lab mate and a few other people from around the department. And we all just stood around this thing as if we were looking at this, dead animal.
Right.
And I just started sobbing, Mark, and I was crying because I thought I 4 years of my life, and now I can't quit now. No chance. So I went back to see Axel and I said, do you know what? Forget it. I don't care if it takes me another year. And if I'm here for 5.5 years doing my PhD, or even 6, I'm not going to give up until I trap.
You go, girl.
So that's it. I would say.
Wow. Yeah. Big one. Well, persistence, tenacity, those are all the signs of great entrepreneurs, great people. Yeah. They don't ever give up. I cited Richard Noble. I mean, he was test running one of his land speed cars before they were going to bring it to the U.S. to run it, and he made one last run and the chutes failed. And at 180 miles an hour, he had to either go into a cavern or turn the thing sideways and crash it. That's at 180. That's when he slowed down to 180. So, yeah, you just don't give up. You just don't give up. Wow, what a story. Well, but you did it. You got there. So kudos to you for what you've done. Let's take a short break and thank our sponsors. We come back. I want to dive a little deeper into your car passion because that's what we're all about here. So sit tight, keep the seatbelt on, watch out for those negative, positive atom ion zingers, whatever Cece plays with, and we'll be right back. So what do you do after running a race team for 27 years with over 100 podiums, multiple Daytona wins, and a win at Le Mans? Well, if you're a racer and the Racers Group team owner, Kevin Buckler, you start Adobe Road Winery. It's located in Petaluma, California, and he and his team have created a winning combination with the Racing Series, 4 ultra-premium red wine blends that are in a class of their own. Like racing, these wines comprise of art, precision, engineering, science, wrapped in a whole lot of fun. You can choose from 4 blends titled Redline, Apex, Shift, and the 24. Today, I'm going to talk about Shift. This wine was awarded 93 points by Robert Parker's Wine Advocate. It's balanced and spicy with dark blueberries and a cigar aroma. The unique bottle shape features a vintage-inspired metal gated shift back with carbon fiber, and the cork is topped with a 5-speed shift knob. That's right. There's going to be some battles at the dinner table on who gets to keep the cork after this bottle has been enjoyed. The Racing Series is a delicious gift for the automotive enthusiast in your life. And I've got a deal for you. If you use the code CARSYEAH, all one word in caps, at checkout, you get $10 off any purchase of the wines from the Racing Series. Your wine ships promptly and arrives quickly right at your door. Use the code CARSYEAH at checkout and get $10 off your purchase from the Racing Series today. There's always a seat at the table for excellence with the Racing Series. Go to adoberoadwines.com and use the code CARSYEAH today. Cheers! My favorite collector car magazine is Keith Martin's Sports Car Market. I've been a subscriber for decades. Sports Car Market is the Wall Street Journal for enthusiasts and collectors. It's your monthly must-read, whether you dream of owning a collector car, maybe you have 2, or maybe you've got 200. Sports Car Market has been around for 31 years, and it's filled with valuable articles, intelligent write-ups, and the latest auction sales. Go to sportscarmarket.com and subscribe today. Here's a couple deals I have for you just for listening here on Cars Yeah. If you use the checkout code Cars Yeah, you'll receive a 50% discount on your digital subscription at Sports Car Market. That's an exclusive offer from Cars Yeah. And guess what? Here's another deal. If you'd like to get the actual magazine, use the code BSH for buy, sell, hold. That's code BSH, and you'll get $10 off your annual print subscription. That's right, $10 off. Both of these are exclusive offers here at Cars Yeah for Sports Car Market Magazine. Just go to sportscarmarket.com and get your deals today. Let's take a pit stop from the conversation and talk about my charity of choice here at Cars Yeah, America's Automotive Trust. America's Automotive Trust is a group of like-minded nonprofits working together to preserve and promote car culture across the country. Together, they provide scholarships and grants to aspiring technicians and restoration artists. They provide youth education programs and bring communities together through auto-related events, car shows, and drives. One of those nonprofits is very near and dear to my heart because it's right down the road from the Cars Yeah headquarters. It's the LeMay America's Car Museum in Tacoma, Washington. One of the world's truly great automobile collections and one of those must-see bucket list destinations for car people like you and me. If you haven't seen it, I hope you'll make a trip soon. And if you have seen it, it's probably time to visit again. To learn more about this fantastic museum, go to www.americascarmuseum.org. And while you're there, you can donate to help them keep their engines running. That's www.americascarmuseum.org. All right, Cece, we're back, and I want to talk about cars. And I want you to share a story that instigated this passion for cars. You grew up in a family, car dad, car mom. I mean, I got a great picture of you sitting on the fender of a very special car. So tell me the pivotal moment in your life when you knew you were going to be a car gal.
So I will tell you, the evolution for me was one that went visual, driving, and then owning and fixing. And this is, I suspect, only the start of my journey yet. But because it began with visual, I'm going to back up and tell you that my interest in cars in the very beginning was not one of tinkering with them or driving with them, as opposed to what everyone assumes because I'm a physicist. So I was brought up very much as a girly girl doing ballet and piano and sort of girly things. And Mexico in the 80s was sort of normal to do this. And I don't think in the very beginning, my interest with cars was really on the technical side. So when I first started being interested with cars, it was mainly looking at how beautiful they were as objects. I would be taken to these concours and I'd go around with a camera and I'd take pictures of all these cars and be sort of, amazed by them. And I remember the first car that visually I fell in love with was seeing Ralph Lauren's Bugatti Atlantique, the black Atlantique,
yes,
at Pebble Beach. And I took a picture of the car. And I had this big blown up picture of the car. By the time I went to Princeton, I had a picture of this car above my desk. And there's a very funny note underneath it that said, "This is why you work hard, Cece." And as it happened, I ended up being roommates with Lauren Bush when I was at Princeton.
Oh, wow.
And Lauren Bush ended up dating and then marrying David Lauren,
Yes.
Ralph Lauren's son.
Yeah.
So at one point when they started dating, Ralph Lauren gave me a book of his, the collection, the Ralph Lauren collection. And I remember telling him about this Atlantique very excitedly and saying, David, I love your father's car and blah, blah, blah. Many years later, I think it was 2013, Ralph took the car to Villa d'Este to show.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'd been going to Villa d'Este with my parents and my then boyfriend. And so I go along to Villa d'Este. I was living in Switzerland at the time. And I meet up with the whole family. And there was this really magical moment where we're sitting in the bar and I'm sitting with them. And David leans over to Ralph and he says, "Dad, Cece used to have a picture of your car over her desk at university saying, and it was just, this fantastic sort of thing of seeing it there. And yeah, so that's my visual journey. Now my driving journey, the moment I fell in love with driving classic cars, this was an experience with very dear friends of ours, Tom and Gwen Price. Tom and Gwen and their family, and I have been my family, we've done classic cars and tours together many, many times in the past. And at some point, they invited me to the Rally Nippon in Japan with them.
Oh,
and
cool.
so out we went. And yeah, it was Tom and Gwen were in their Cal Spider, and their son Greg and I were in a 275 GTB4. Aha, not a bad car to be driving.
Not a bad car indeed. Yes. Oh my gosh.
So I'm over the moon because I'm getting to drive this car. And Tom, bless his soul, I think he let me drive his cars before my dad let me drive his. And so we.
Well, your dad knew more than he did, maybe.
yeah, maybe that was it. I just got the "don't scratch them, move the way" with that belt buckle for my dad.
Yes.
And so on this one particular day, we had been driving all day, and we got to driving change in the afternoon. We stopped at a great shot at the petrol station of the two cars, and all of a sudden we see that the skies are starting to darken really badly, and we've heard that there's a typhoon that is coming to the north of the island.
Uh-oh.
And it's going to start storming very, very badly. And of course I say, typical me, "Oh no, Greg, I'll take this drive. I'm fine." Well, we start driving, and Mark, it started raining so hard that you couldn't see an inch in front of you. You couldn't see.
That's frightening. In a normal car,
Yes.
much less
And
275.
So I'm in his car.
Yeah.
And that particular car, as a left-hand drive car in a right-hand drive country where the street signs make no sense because they're in kanji.
Of course.
So I'm going, okay, well, all I'm going to do is I'm going to follow these two red taillights in front of me and hope for the best.
Yeah.
And eventually we found our way home. We got out, and I was just, it was the happiest moment because I just thought, and Tom was so impressed with me. He kept telling everyone how fantastic I was. And I think that was my sort of like falling in love with driving moment. But then if I come to the owning bit, this is the owning, fixing, and driving bit. The car that made me fall in love with classic cars fully and wholly is my Triumph TR3. So I have a 1955 Triumph TR3. It was my first classic car, the first classic car I owned, the first classic car where looked under the bonnet and tried to understand what was going on. The first classic car that left me by the side of the road that I needed to do something about. And, and the first one that I drove on a daily basis around the Cotswolds. And I think this particular car is really that's where I got hooked. And I have a really nice memory of doing a rally in Tuscany with my mother. So she's always my navigator now for my rallies, to my detriment, because my mother gets us time. And we had a Monet in the car. So we thought, well, we're home free because all we need to do is reset this GPS tracker, this Monet, and then we'll be fine. And so off we go. And at some point, my distracted mother forgot to reset the Monet. So I went, Mom, did you reset the Monet?
Uh-oh.
Oh no, I forgot. And so, we go wrong at some point. And it's one of those, comic situations where you see other cars coming back the other way, and then you go back that way, and then you all turn around. And at some point we all dispersed in the forest. It was very funny. And we ended up on this unmarked gravel road. We lost all cell phone reception. We had no idea. We were literally just in the forest, it's narrow road going downhill. My mother's going, you are going to kill me. I feel you're going to fall off.
This is the end.
This is the end. And we basically, and I was quite frightened, I must say. And then we come out this clearing up this forest road, and all of a sudden we are in this majestic view in the middle of, Tuscany, outside Florence. And it's just, we looked aside and there's this tour bus full of Japanese tourists getting out to take pictures. And I'm like, Mom, you know what? I don't know if we're even meant to be here, but sharing this moment with you right now, this beautiful view, I don't care that we got lost. We can be there an hour late. It doesn't matter. This is what it's all about, and you forget every one of your problems for that 1 hour that I was driving. All I was focusing on was not killing my mother and keeping this car on the road.
and that Triumph TR3 has a special name, right?
It does. Her name is Froglet.
Froglet. Yeah, absolutely. Froglet. Beautiful car, by the way. All your cars are beautiful. Oh, what some fun stories here. Well, you already answered the next question. You talked about Froglet. That was really your first special car, right?
Yes, that was my very... Okay, sorry, I've gone ahead of myself.
No, that's okay, because, that's good. We have lots to talk about today, but I'm glad you told it that way, because that was a very, very cool story, and to get to share that with your mom. I mean, you'll never forget it, and here you are sharing it again. Your mom's probably shared it over a glass of wine with friends. I mean, yeah, very cool. Well, I'm going to ask you something nobody's ever asked you before, Cece. I'm almost certain of this. I'm going to crawl into your head. I'm going to be your psychiatrist today. If you woke up tomorrow and you were manifest as a car. Now, this isn't what you want to be. So, if you want to be a beautiful Ferrari, which of course you could certainly be, but that's not what this question's about. It's more about your personal attributes as a person manifest in a vehicle. What would Cici Muldoon be? So
I must say that I did look at this question previously, and I did think about it. So I
Good. You're abiding by the rules. That's a good sign.
Yeah, it's like abiding by the rules. So I'm going to tell you what my sort of train of thought how I arrived at the answer I did, and then I will tell you that the answer was provided to me by a friend, and it's so funny that I'm going to read you what he said because it is that funny.
All right.
So I thought, if I'm going to be a car, I've got to be a race car because I'm exceedingly competitive and I like to win. So I've got to be a race car. And then I thought, okay, so what car would I be? Would I be a Silver Arrow? No, because I'm actually quite complicated. I'm pretty difficult. So I've got to be something like just not very nice or easy to drive. I've got to be something a little bit complicated. And then, I'm sort of thinking around these cars and I'm thinking, I really want to be a 412P, but I can't really, but that's a bit masculine and I can't, I'm not really. So I'm having this conversation with my friend Peter Reed, and he says to me, probably a race car because you like to be first. So he echoes my thoughts.
Yep.
You are an Anglophile despite being constructed overseas. A bit like the Bentley Speed 8 that won Le Mans in 2003, and that was bloody complicated. Bentley had very low miles per gallon, so it consumed a lot of liquid. Who does that remind me of?
That is perfect. Wow.
That would be me.
Yeah, I love it. That's why this question is so much fun when you really put some thought to it. And I'm happy that you shared it with a friend, because I've had many guests that have done that, and they give you a perspective of yourself that you can't see, of course.
Absolutely.
Or they might enlighten you a little bit to something you don't want to see. Who knows? But that's not bad.
Well,
Bentley Speed 8. I love it. All right, Cece, we're entering what I call the last lap. You're a lady who moves fast. You love to do things, accomplish things. I'm going to fire off a series of questions and ask you to give our listeners some quick blips of that Bentley Speed 8 throttle. So here we go. What's one of your personal habits you believe has contributed to your many successes in life?
it's one that I hate in myself, but I think can sometimes be positive, which is that I am very obsessive. I'm a perfectionist, and I will obsess over getting something just right, and I will hammer at it until it is. And that can be anything from something as annoying as I lost an earring and I need to go back and look in Hyde Park to make sure I didn't drop it over. To getting something really, really perfect for my company.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would expect nothing less from a physicist. How about if I could arrange for you to have a drink or a meal with anyone in the automotive industry? Now, this could be somebody who's living or someone who's passed. Who would it be?
Hands down, Enzo Ferrari. If I could bring that man back from the grave. I mean, I have so much admiration for, I think he was a difficult character, but when you see his early history, such a tenacious fighter, he lost his dad, he lost his uncle, people don't go back and see where he came from and how he had to fight to build what he did. And I think the mark that he built, it's my obsession in life. I'm just as sick as my poor father by this point, and I would do anything to meet him.
Right, and he lost his son, of course, too. A super tragedy.
Exactly. Oh, and yes, exactly.
Dino,
exactly.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about a Dino. I have a feeling in a minute here, but how about, because we have to talk about the Dino. It's one of my favorite cars. How about the best automotive advice someone else has offered you when it comes to classic cars or driving cars or being around cars?
Hands down comes from Ed Gilbertson, who we already spoke of, and it's our mantra for ICJAG, and it's cars are meant to be driven, motorcycles are meant to be ridden. And I live that with my Dino. I drive it all the time, and guess what? I have now dinged it, and it doesn't matter because it's being used. So that would be my...
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm going to add one to that.
Okay.
I think we spoke about this last time on Buy, Sell, Hold, but my father always says that cars are passports to experiences for him. And I think I will add that one there because I think cars are ways to make memories and it's the number one thing that I love about owning cars is that they allow me to meet people and do things that I wouldn't otherwise.
Oh, absolutely. And tell my listeners here a little bit about this beautiful 74 Dino you have, because it's your pride and joy. I know it's one of the cars you would never, ever let go. Dino was the first, and I know they didn't call them Ferraris, but they're Ferraris. First Ferrari I ever drove back when I was 16 when I had a car detailing business, and a guy named Sam Salemi had one. I think I told you this on Buy, Sell, Hold. It was originally owned by Cher, which kind of made it very unique and different. Had Baroni wire wheels, which you don't see on those too much. I think I prefer the wheels you have. But yeah, tell us a little bit about this beautiful purple Ferrari Dino.
Yeah, so she's, her name is Viola.
Viola.
Which stems from the fact that she is Viola Metallizzato. So there was 31 made in Viola Metallizzato, and she's a 246 GTS. So she's open top, and she's just the most, as a dear friend of mine likes to say, it's the most fun you can have with no horsepower. The car feels to me, I've had the chance to drive a few nice Ferraris in my life, maybe not the most powerful ones, but for me the Dino feels like a whole experience in and of itself. It's sort of the wind in the car, and then the sound of the engine just behind you, and the clicks of the gearbox, and the way it handles, and it just feels like you're driving something much more powerful than it is. Yes. And in terms of looks, I think the muscularity, to me, it's one of the most beautiful cars ever made, along with an E-Type. I think it's a car that is timeless. It's beautiful. It's sexy. It's classic in the sense that it looks modern despite its age. And, I'm absolutely in love with my Dino. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Of course, no. And, they're so beautiful. When you're sitting in them, you're so low. Those big fenders are rising up on each side of the front end. And for a long time, I kept thinking, why are these things not worth very much? I mean, for a long time, you could get one for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. And of course, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Words of a loser, somebody told me once. Should have bought one back then, because now they are far, far, far far from that. So yeah, most definitely beautiful. Now, how about a resource? Is there a go-to for you that you might think our listeners would benefit from that they maybe haven't heard of? A website, could be a podcast, an app, it could be anything, but something that you find yourself going back to.
Oh gosh, I mean, for cars, for me, my because of my obsession that I've spoken about, it's always doing Ferrari Chat or Barchetta really as resources. But I would encourage people to go look at ICJAG, actually, to look at our website, so icjag.org, because there's a lot on our mission and how we look at classic cars. And then I'm trying to think in general. Well, obviously, if anybody wants to come check our website out, they're more than welcome to. So
VeriVin, right?
Yes, it's verivin.com. Very easy.
Yes. Now, is there a book that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Absolutely. So I've got one car book and then one nonfiction and one fiction.
Okay.
So my car book, I would say, hands down, Dino the Little Ferrari by Doug Nye. Which, of course, because he documents the evolution of the Dino engine, so not the car itself, but the engine that was in the F2 cars in the 50s and then the F1 cars. And I think it's a spectacularly written book. It's got everything about the engine and all the details in the world, but it's also telling the story of Ferrari, which is, for me, a really special part of the marque. So that I would really recommend reading. And then in terms of other stuff, non-car stuff, so a nonfiction I've read recently, which I really, really enjoyed, is Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, which is, for all intents and purposes, an anthropology book, but it's actually it's just a fascinating read, and I highly recommend that. And then fiction, I would say Somerset Maugham of Human Bondage, because it just teaches you so much about human relationships, and it's one of the nice books I've read in a while on a sort of fiction front. Those are my three. Oh, I'll add one. I'm looking at one. I just have to add it. I'm so sorry.
Yes,
I have to
go
add
ahead.
Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, because it is a fantastic, funny book, and it just shows what a great spirit Richard Feynman was.
Love it. I love it. Well, I'll make sure I put a link to all these great books on Cece's show notes page. Go to carsyeah.com, type in Cici, C-I-C-I, Muldoon, and all these books will be listed there. There's a great place, by the way, on the Cars Yeah website called Guest Recommended Books, and there are over 1,650 books listed there with quick, easy clicks to buy. Check it out. Yeah, it's a great resource. All my past inspiring automotive enthusiast guests have recommended some fantastic reads. And you've got some books on here that are not on the list yet. So very nice. And of course, Doug Nye, he was a guest here on Cars Yeah. All right. We are up to the checkered flag here, Cece. And this last question can be a bit of a doozy. I'm going to buy you a collector car today. But there are some rules of the game that could make this very, very challenging. And these are the rules. You can't sell it to buy a bunch of other cars with. So if you sell all your cars, which you're going to have to because this is the only one electric car you can have. You can't have me buy you an expensive car and then you buy your cars back and have a bunch of cash. You're too smart. I know you would do that. So that little trick's off the table. It's like finding the genie's lantern and say, give me 1,000 more wishes. Then I want you to drive it, but I don't think that's a problem for you. No dust collectors here. But again, that one rule about it being the only car. So either you can keep one of the cars you have, which means you're going to be a cheap date for me today, or you're going to be a very expensive date, I have a feeling. And I'm going to buy you a car today. So, Cece, what am I buying?
Well, sadly for you, I was going to be expensive already, but after this weekend, I've upgraded to even more expensive.
Oh, no. Ouch. Ouch.
I was going to say a Cal Spider, but there was this most fantastic GTO at Hampton Court this weekend. It was the second prototype car. And I looked at it and all over again, I fell in love with the car. And I just went, man, honestly, I will work my life to have a GTO.
Oh, yeah. Well,
that's my motivation.
Yeah. For what they cost, I'd have to work a couple lives, I think. Oh, my gosh. Now, the second prototype car. So what color was that GTO?
It's like a silver blue color. It's a silver color, but it looks like a bluish silver. It's just stunning. I think the chassis number is 3387 if anybody wants to look it up.
Was that car on the lawn at Pebble when they had all the GTOs there? You know?
I'm not sure. Well, it wasn't in this color configuration. Certainly not. Don't know if it would have been.
I'll have to look that up because, I was trying to think of which car that was. And of course, there's some very unique ones. I remember years ago being in Japan and seeing the Sterling Moss car, the green one. I think is the only green one when it was part of the Matsuda collection. And of course, up here in the Pacific Northwest, John Shirley has one that he's since painted white, which I think is the only white one that you see out there.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And you know what? I've just looked it up, and it was a pebble in that display.
What color was it at that time?
I don't know what color was it that one. I think it was the same. I think it was more. It looks like a darker blue, but still like a silver.
Yeah, there was a car. Bruce Canepa brought that car to Pebble that year because I remember him driving it on the lawn and parking it and thinking, "Oh, blue one, very beautiful." And I think maybe he owned it or it was driving it probably for a client. I don't know. He's had so many cool cars to run through Canepa Design.
It's interesting because I'm looking at a picture of it next to Chris Cox's car, the blue and yellow one, and it actually looks just as blue. So, yeah.
Yeah, could have been the same one. Well, I'll have to look that up. A GTO, oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to have to call my banker here. I'm going to go, another GTO picker here, buddy. And he's going to go, Mark, you got to stop giving away all these cars. You're not going to have enough left to live on at the end of your life. Well, Cece, I'd be more than happy to buy you a GTO. You've taken me on a fantastic ride. I really, really enjoyed myself this morning. Before I let you go, though, before I let you drive down the road in that beautiful GTO, could you give us maybe one little parting piece of wisdom or guidance?
Oh, goodness. Always stay hopeful and optimistic in life. Things generally happen for a reason, which translates to you can always find a silver lining for just about anything. I love it.
I love it, especially this day and age, and especially this year when there's been so many challenges for so many people. Do your best to stay positive, in the words of Cici Muldoon. And what's the best way for people to follow you and keep up with all the things you're doing in life?
Sure. Well, I'm Cici Muldoon on most of my social media. So Cici Muldoon on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on LinkedIn. And I think I might be, so my full name is Cecilia Muldoon. So I think I might be Cecilia Muldoon on LinkedIn. And otherwise, our website is www.verivin.com. And you can find VeriVin on all the aforementioned social media as well. VERIVIN. Well, so if you were here, it's VeriVin because it stems from the word verification and van for French for wine, but VeriVin, it has evolved to be. So.
VeriVin. All right. I'll make sure I put links to that. Check out what Cece is up to. Follow her. You'll see all the fun she's having with cars. And if you're fortunate and you follow her on social media, you will get to at least meet Froglet, Hector, Viola. Some of the fans that live in her garage. So very, very cool. Cece, this has been so much fun. Thank you for spending some time with me today, for sharing your amazing life with the listeners here. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you down the road.
Thanks, Mark.
This was fun. Bye-bye. If you're listening to Cars Yeah, you've probably spent some time working on your favorite ride. But how confident are you working on your finances? You may be able to rebuild a fuel injection system, but can you decipher the details of a mutual fund? If you're like me, investments, insurance, annuities, budgeting, and other financial concepts may seem a bit daunting, but what if I told you there's a book that describes these subjects and more in an easy-to-read and a very humorous way? My friend Chris Kimball, CFP, a longtime sponsor and past guest here on Cars Yeah, has written that book, and it's titled The Saga of Ike and Penny, a couple's humorous journey through the confusing world of finance. It's a fun look at things you need to know. Everything from investing to effective ways to get rid of credit card debt, and it's probably the only book on finance with a VMAX on the front cover and a classic Mini Cooper on the back. The book's available at Amazon for just $10, and this book will dramatically improve the direction of your financial future. I gave copies to each of my children. All securities are through Money Concepts Capital Corp. Christopher Kimball Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp. Get your copy, The Saga of Ike and Penny, today.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.